I've made you host. Yeah. So the recording should, when the room shuts down, the recording should just go to the cloud. I've already got a recording and I'll edit it later. I can. Yeah. Yes, I can. Yeah, I set that up automatically. Yeah, so we might just have to add in, do they have a PowerPoint presentation they want to share? Perfect. Lovely. All right, thank you everyone. Well, I'll just stay here for a little bit, just in case any online people come in. It's just Tanya here. I'm just checking. I can't hear any sound from the room.
All right, how about now? Hello? Can you hear us? This should pick up.
You still can't? No, still can't hear any sound.
Can you raise the volume on the, can you ask her to raise the volume on her computer? Check 1, 2, 3.
Have you checked that your volume's right up? Yeah, I can hear you here. No sound through Zoom.
If they can't talk.
Yeah, then picking up the microphone.
Yes, now I can.
Now you can?
Yep. Can you hear us? This is check 1, 2, 3.
Checking. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Well, okay. So this is a lapel mic. You can hook it on or just carry it around. Okay. This is you just stick it onto your phone.
I'll probably carry it around because we're going to swap presenters.
There you go.
Steph's going to start.
So this is a lectern mic. You don't really need that.
So you're going to every time someone
when it is
speaks,
red,
we're
it
gonna-
is on.
Sure.
Okay, it's the reverse mentality. People think, oh, it's
Right,
not.
right, not
Just hold
working.
it and
Yeah,
just
sure.
hands both of them together instead of clipping and unclipping.
So you chime in at any point you feel you've got something to say.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be an intimate gathering.
Yeah. No, we've got people out there. So they're doing it through Zoom. You sure?
Thank you so much.
Sue's
Yes.
gonna be the evaluator and critique us and give us feedback.
So you needn't sign mine.
I'm sure I probably should take the mic just to introduce you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
No worries at all. Yeah.
I won't close it in case you Oh, I hope this isn't going to be too crackly. But anyway, look, thank you very much for coming. This is a really exciting opportunity for us to learn from Tagai, is that how you pronounce it? Tagai State School, and we've got a whole team coming to talk to you about rural and remote placements and the sorts of opportunities and the excitement that you can experience in these spaces. I'm Lindy Abowie. I'm the Acting Head of School for Teacher Education and Early Childhood here at USQ, and I'm going to hand over to Steph first up, and I'll ask each of our presenters to introduce themselves to you.
Thank you so much.
Lindy, it's just Tanya. There we go.
Sorry, Tanya, yeah?
When you hold the microphone up, can you just hold it up further? Otherwise, we chop your heads off. There we go. That's better. You've got to the camera is on movement. So can you
Okay, so we need to have it right up close to mouth.
Yeah, move over to your left because your heads can't be seen. Oh no, to your right.
Over to our right. So we need to stand over here.
That's perfect. Now I can see you.
Okay. Though we still only have... Yeah, Steph?
The camera's picking your heads up.
Right. Excellent. Okay, I'll hold this and I'll just pass that.
Okay. Kapamigi batay nga sa ngapa nguzungil Stephanie Savage ngai kukalai lag yama. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Stephanie Savage. I'm from the Central Islands of the Torres Strait, Kukalgal Nation, and the island is Yam Island, and I'm the Associate Principal at Tagai State College. I'm going to now, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather here today, pay respects to elders past and present, and also acknowledge, thank you very much to the team here for allowing us to come here today and speak to you guys, and thank you for making yourself available. I'm going to hand it over to the team now to introduce themselves.
Kapamigi Batanga. My name is Sue Mitchell-Moore, another one of the associate principals. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, we will have convinced you not only to come up and join us for a prac, but also to come up and join us when you graduate. I will hand over now to one of our ambassadors for Tagai State College, Mr. Shane Hancock, Deputy Principal at Leichhardt State School.
Good morning, guys. Yes, I'm Deputy Principal at one of our local state schools here, and my involvement with Tagai is basically an ambassador role because I worked up there as a young teacher, like you guys are contemplating at the moment. Had a fantastic time up there. It was 20 years ago, but my connection with the Torres Strait has never left, and so I'm a local person on the ground that's able to help people with understanding how Tagai works and make those connections for you as somebody, you know, fairly close. I'll just pass you over to Mark.
Kapamigi Batanya, everyone. My name's Mark Law. I'm an Associate Principal at Tagai State College. I've been there about a year now, but I was at Thursday Island about 17 years ago, and there's a common saying that if you eat the fruit of the wongai, you'll always return, so I must have eaten some 17 years ago. I'm very pleased to be there at the moment and happy to help with any questions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Couple of things I want to mention about the slides. So Saungapa and Mayam, though, that's the two words, well, one of the words I mentioned at the beginning, meaning welcome. You can see that Saungapa is in red, and you'll see that Mayam is in green. The reason for that is that we want to show the differentiate the two languages, Kalalagaya being red and Miriam being green. So the students that you see there holding up the signs there are from Malukia and Ngurpailag, which is one of our campuses in the top west. So Kayleen, our head of teaching, our head of curriculum, mentioned this particular campus, and her children and their father is from that island. So this natural phenomena that you see here of what you might describe as being the beta ball is called Gagartup in the eastern islands of the Torres Strait. And when you are travelling around the eastern islands of the Torres Strait, you will notice this natural phenomena. And as you can see there, all of the sardines that you see in that bait ball, they're all swimming in the same direction. And this is a symbol that for us is symbolising the way that we roll, if you'd like to say, the way that we do our business working together as a team. You can see there that a little picture of a little predator there, a fish that's trying to sort of come and attack, but being together in that one ball and swimming in the same direction means that they're all protecting each other. So it's a mechanism to protect themselves. It's a defensive mechanism. But if anything comes from the outside or tries to attack, they may spread and split for a moment, but they will always regroup and come back together. So it's about that strength that's generated from being working together as a team and all being on the same page and being consistent in everything that we do. But it's also, we've heard from an elder in the Eastern Islands that this particular bait ball has been known to be so strong that you've been able to have a dinghy actually sit on top of it. And while it may just look like the size that it is, we've known this particular phenomenon to span quite a long distance, so they can, be quite long. You'll see the 454 there, the pillars, the givens and the imperatives. They come from our teaching and learning handbook. And they're the things that matter to us in the Torres Strait, the things that hold up the UMI education, our brand of education. It's underpinned by the things that we consider to be the imperatives and the things that are non-negotiables. Essentially, they're the givens. And across the top, of course, we've just basically making sure that everything around leading, teaching, and learning is about knowing exactly where we are at all times, knowing our data and being able to map out our targets and what we want to achieve and how we plan on meeting those targets. So every year we have a theme, and you can see some of the themes there from the previous years. But this year's theme is called Keribaged, Keribadorger, Ngalpan Laga, Ngalpan Zaget, which translates to our place and our work. So that fits in beautifully with the concept of Gagartut, because it is about collective ownership. It is about everybody's business. It's about every one of us owning our data, owning where the plans that we have in place, and everyone making it their business, and it's our work. This is what it looks like in action in terms of the definition on the left here and how we measure how we are going with our place and our work. So I'll let you just have a few moments just to have a read through that yourself. A big thing that we know about education in the Torres Strait, and you'll know this for yourself, Shane, when you were there, that one of the big issues that we have prior to becoming a college, when we were all separate schools out in the outer islands, was that as separate schools, we were all on our own individual journeys and doing our own things. So as a college and being amalgamating all those schools into one college now meant that we could do things a bit more smarter, we could be a bit more strategic, and we could also be consistent in terms of our teaching and learning, so that would then, of course, help to address some of those inconsistencies with our judgment, say, for example, with our children's work, but also ensuring that that standard, that high standard of education, the quality of the education was going to be consistent across the college too, and comparable to South. ZNATHCES, the title itself is actually an acronym, so it's a pasting together of a couple of words. They actually are some letters there taken from the wind directions, the four winds of Zay, Cookie, our four winds. And ZNATHCES, of course, is the Torres Strait, the language word for Torres Strait. This is just a profile, I guess, of ZNATHCES, and you can see our theme coming through in our place and our work. So name, obviously, ZNATHCES. We have our 5 nations that you see on the map there, highlighted in yellow. For 48,000 square kilometres separates all of us, so we're all separated by water. Can't just jump in a car and drive to the next island. Our aim or our vision for the Torres Strait is for autonomy, for self-determination, to be able to determine our own affairs and to be able to take leadership and ownership of that. There are 3 types of organisations that operate in the Torres Strait. One is gerontocracy, and that is that it's a form of governance that is led by elders, or in some cases we've got islands where we have a chief as the person who is who's the leadership, and you have what we call a COD. So they are a group of elders or people of authority, big people of authority, not in size, but big people with authority that can make decisions and be able to sit on that governance structure. So that's a traditional structure called gerontocracy. We have meritocracy, which we're all familiar with. So that's based on merit process. So you apply for a job, you get shortlisted, and you win it based on your capability. The other form of organisation we have up there is, of course, the meritocracy, gerontocracy, and how's that? It's just gone from my head. Democracy. We should remember democracy very well, because we've been getting bombarded on the news, haven't we, about, yes, democracy and everyone having a say now and being able to get that opportunity to make decisions and be involved in the decision-making process. And of course, when you come to Tagai State College, you are a visitor, so that's your status for the time that you're there. But as Judy said at the beginning, we welcome you into the Tagai family when you do come, and absolutely as a member of the Torres Strait family. So our work, we call Tagai State College the Tagai family. Our brand of Yumi is Yumi Education. That's the brand of our education. 7 different identities. Even though we have 17 campuses, they each have their own identity, and they've maintained their mottos, and they actually have got their little individual logos still maintained. We have many multi-age classrooms in our part of the world. We have 2 boarding colleges that are both based on TI, where children coming from the outer islands to attend secondary education. Roughly about 1250 students in the primary years, and about 400 in the secondary years. 400 staff located on those islands, and we have teacher accommodation across the college, across the Torres Strait. And for us, of course, professional development costs a lot of money to come down the mainland. So for us, it's much more economical for us to have professional development in-house. And we can do that because we're a large organisation, and we have to value that the expertise that we do have within our own ranks too, as well as participating in online and other modes of professional development delivery. So student enrolment, that just gives you a bit of a breakdown, a bit of an idea of each campus and how many students we have enrolled. And you can see on the map there, it's a bit hard, the print is a bit small, but we have the campus sizes ranging from the most littlest being Ugar El-Rer Uteb, which is just up on the corner there Sue's pointing to. That has the least, oh, it's a touchscreen, the least amount of students. I think from Mark was saying there are about 50 is the population in the whole community. So about 15 or so of those are students that attend that campus. So we have a teaching head of campus and a teacher aide, and we're hoping to get a community teacher in there as well. The big campuses, which are the 2 Waibin campuses, are based on Thursday Island, and we have That's where the secondary campus is. The only secondary campus we have is based on Thursday Island. One of the other campuses that are one of our largest ones is Bardu, which is over here in the New Western Islands. And at the top there, we have Kadagor, which is very, very close, as you can see, to the New Guinea border there. All of our campuses, of course, their names are in language. And that's another thing that signifies who we are. And of course, language, as you heard me speak before, is critically endangered for us. And so we are absolutely committed in the Torres Strait, both in the community and across the region, as well as in the school too, ensuring that we're doing what we can to contribute to the maintenance and the revitalisation of our languages.
Shane, you might like to leap up here with me to talk about the learner guarantee. So we have the same expectations of these. Oh, a little bit like that, because of my big booming teacher voice. We have the same expectations of these kids as we do of all kids right across this state. So it's national curriculum. If you can just imagine 17 campuses spread across 48,000 square kilometres, each with a head of campus at varying stages in their leadership journey. So to get the alignment and consistency of planning, preparation, pedagogy, curriculum is really quite a challenge, but we don't regard it as so. We just regard it as a given. So we need to get systems in place. So Shane, you were part of that journey way back then. Can you just describe for the team what your life was like, flying from island to island in support of the teams? Because this is still in place today with our teaching and learning team.
Okay, so I was what they call an education advisor in the Torres Strait. So I had the privilege of working on every single island community as well as the mainland. And basically that involved, as Steph was saying before, being a visitor in those spaces because I wasn't part of the local community, but I was recognised as part of the local community. So it was the same expectations on every island. Back when I was there, they were separate state schools. Now they're part of the one college. So that had a very different feel to it back in those days compared to what it is now. And there was always a vision back then for eventually becoming a college to try and maximise the opportunities that they're experiencing at the moment. So going in and out of those island communities, it was exactly the same as if you were visiting a local state school here in one suburb to the next. Every single state school that you'll experience in your career has its own culture, its own sense of identity. It's no different than Torres Strait. I guess for myself, as somebody that was working in the curriculum space back then, it was exactly the same expectations. So this is the most northern state school that we have in Queensland. So it does come under all the expectations, all the responsibilities that the Department of Education has of all schools across the state. They just do it in a very different way because it has to be localised. But that's no different to what I do at my school at the moment at Leichhardt. We do things differently at Leichhardt compared to, say, Brassel or any of the other local schools that you guys might be aware of through Prax, etc. So if you do choose to go up in that space, just think of it as the same as being at any mainland school. It's just a very unique environment in the way that you do business.
Thank you, Shane. So we have a teaching and learning team headed up by Head of Teaching and Learning, overseen by Steph. So we've got heads of department, our early years head of department, as well as our head of department curriculum, and these amazing coaches, these pedagogical coaches who go around the islands and they don't tell them how to do it or what to do. They just hop in there alongside them and help build their capacity. So if you come up to work with us, you're not just dumped on an island and told to go teach and here's your curriculum. There's a whole wraparound support program, which basically I think, you modelled it 20 years ago and it's still been a tried and trusted model. So we've got a learner guarantee. Our job, as Steph said, is to make sure that we've got our language and culture embedded because that's their roots to their community. But at the same time, we've got to equip these kids with the 21st century skills they need in order to head off into the wild blue yonder to fulfil their dreams and aspirations, but at the same time never forget where they've come from. So part of the role too is to make sure that we continue to build this great Torres Strait nation. So
Steph's kids are an example of that. So Steph's kids are down here in Toowoomba. Yeah. attending USQ in the Toowoomba campus. So, you know, it's one of those far removed places you'd ever expect to find a couple of kids raised in the Torres Strait and a very different culture, and suddenly they're, you know, in Toowoomba and, you know, getting on with their learning and their, you know, aspirations. So you've got to always remember when you go to a place like Tagai, those kids could end up anywhere in the world and often do. And you just never know where you're going to bump into someone from the Torres Strait. And as Mark was saying before, you know, you can leave the Torres Strait and return many, many years later and still feel like you've never left. So it's one of those really unique community experiences.
This is now over to you, Steph.
Thank you so much, Shane. Great to have your insight, I guess, and especially after all these years, you know, the impact that it has had on you as an educator and how it's helped you to, I guess, step into, you know, your career development as well. So thank you for your input. Yes. Okay, so this is just a structure that shows how, I suppose, each of the school council, the P&C, UME Education Services and CIREC, how we are intertwined, I suppose, and how we are connected, but we're all about the same business. We're all about students and making a difference. So these are the partnerships that contribute to our students in the Torres Strait. So we have the school council. So, you know, some of you will have a school council in your school, and the structure and the legislation that sits around that is the same for us up there. And you can see that the chair of our school council there on the right, Mr. Louis. Judy Ketchell is our executive principal that you heard speak in the DVD. You've got the P&C. So every individual campus has still maintained their own P&C organisation. And that was one of the things when we became a college, we gave an undertaking that each campus would keep their P&C governance structure. So that would be the voice of the parents within their community. So we've got 17 separate P&C organisations. Then you've got CIREC, which is the Torres Strait Islander Regional Education Council, and you heard Chair Ned David speak there about what their role is, and that is about being a peak advocacy group for education in the Torres Strait. And so we hear through this particular council all of the expectations, the demands, I guess, from the community. And as an organisation, institution, we actually provide the supply part of that relationship. So it is a supply and demand relationship. UME Education Services, which Ned also happens to be the director of, they are responsible for doing the things that we can't do within the system as a college. So they can do some of the innovative things that the college may not be able to do, which is not part of our jurisdiction as a school per se. So 2 examples of that is that we, UME Education, were able to broker for us and bring what we call the Straight Start program to the college. So on about 12 of our communities, we have Straight Start programs operating, and that's a program for 0 to 3 children who are aged from birth to 3 years old. That's a toddler parent program. So parents are expected, or family members come along with the children, and they participate in this program at school to learn, or maybe in the community that the program is run. They come to learn how little things that they can be doing to support the development and the growth of their children in that age group. Cafe Sasan is also another initiative that's been able to be brokered for us by UME Education. Cafe Sasan is where we have a cafe that sits as part of the cultural centre down the main waterfront area, and it provides a practical opportunity for our students who are doing the hospitality to come and get their real life training as part of their Cafe Sasan. Yep.
Do you remember what your specific improvement agenda was 20 years ago? Because I'd wager they probably haven't changed. I think they're the same as every school. So it's reading, numeracy, and engagement. So for reading, this is the particularly challenging part because, as Steph said before, these kids are EALD, so English may not even be their second language. It might be their third or fourth, and the only time they hear it is at school. So we need to still maintain the integrity of the Australian curriculum, but we need to contextualise it for them. So EA reading, and we've got a very deliberate and specific reading improvement planning this year, and we're trying to get that consistency across our 16 primary campuses that feed into the secondary campus. Numeracy and student engagement. So student engagement, well, it's all about them wanting to be in the classroom. And what is exciting and dippy to us is not necessarily exciting and dippy to them, we've learned. So we need to then continually reinvigorate our pedagogy so that it's meaningful. And so that's the tricky part, because attendance, and we'll have a look at our attendance data later, it's still everybody's business. Attendance still on your radar at Leichhardt State School? All right, is there anything different here to what's on your explicit improvement planning? It's the same. There you go. So this is what it's all about. This is our bread and butter. Have we all got it right yet? I don't think you'd say you have, and we haven't, but it's just that continual quest for better, stronger, faster. We've got other things that we need to contend with these kids now that we probably didn't contend with when we were at school. We old folk I'm talking about now. The anxiety, depression, it's overwhelming. So many kids, the lack of, the resilience factor, all of those things. We've got so much more that we need to be than just teaching. And Mark always makes quite an interesting remark when he said, we do analyse our data, we do plan in response to it. 20 or 30 years ago, we didn't do any of that, but our outcomes were better. So that's quite the challenge for us in our roles now. There's so much accountability for the outcomes, yet when that accountability wasn't there, kids were getting better. I don't know whether you want to add to that observation.
It's exactly that. I guess for myself, having worked up in the Torres Strait, there's one thing that's always remained with me through my travels ever since being there, is that if you think of the kids as mud crabs, a mud crab will naturally want to walk sideways. And when they come to school, we make them walk forwards. And that's a really hard thing to do. And I was taught that lesson when I was up in the Torres Strait, is to think of the kids in that context, that you're making them do quite often things that don't come natural to them because of their context and their community and their own engagement with education, etc. And as Sue was saying before with regards to attendance, you'd think on an island, attendance wouldn't be an issue. But if you don't make school attractive, the kids have got many other distractions out there like fishing or just hanging out at home. And that's no different to us here in the metropolitan region. It's exactly the same context. And I guess that's the big thing, is to realise that if you go to the Torres Strait to do your work, it's no different to doing it in the metropolitan area. You're going to experience the same sort of issues. The only difference is you're going to come away with a much more rich experience for yourself as a professional, and you'll take away lessons that you'll use for the rest of your career.
So we've got a little formula. It's a non-maths person sounding very maths, but we've got a bit of a formula for success. What makes a great teacher? Your experience is up there, and many people come up, they've never been past the front gate of, Brizzy Central, and all of a sudden you've come up to Thursday Island or beyond, to an island 4 kilometres from the New Guinea border as a young person. Even with the internet there now, it's not too bad. There's still some islands that don't have mobile phone coverage. So stretch your head to imagine what life would be like. For me, I love that because I think it's lovely just to be able to have that disconnection. But for young people, that's probably the biggest challenge at the moment. So I've got a great grad that is out on Mussig Island and loving the fishing and the community and has fitted right in, young Brooke Finney, but just missing her mates and looking on Facebook and seeing all the things that she's missing out on. And had a few wobbles in the middle of the term, wondering whether or not this was, she was going to make it. So I sent a pre-service teacher out there this term. Have we got to finish? Okay. Sent a pre-service teacher out there, not because I wanted to use the pre-service teacher as a social experiment, but I wanted to, to give us somebody there her own age. So look, there's a lot of wraparound wellbeing support that you'll get up there as well. I'm going to power along because we're going to run it.
Okay, so just a couple of things, a few things that are new here in 2019. I'll talk to the first four and then hand it over to Sue. But we took from the Principals Conference this year, the ADG, Peter Kelly, talked about systemness. And we've taken it on board so that everything we do is around making sure that each time we come together, there is intentional collaboration. Everyone understands the purpose, everyone understands the work, and everyone understands what the output is, what's expected as a result of that collaboration. There's the alignment, so that what we're doing is aligning to our college priorities, which is aligned to the system's priorities and expectations. And precision is about knowing every student, what their needs are. It's the how do you know part. So it's what we do based on the data to provide that learning and that teaching that's going to help them in their growth and development. Story of Tagai, this is something that's new this year that we thought everyone that comes to the Torres Strait that is part of Tagai State College must know, must be able to say what the narrative is around the Tagai story. What is it? Who is this Tagai? People say, oh, you work for Tagai State College. Who is Tagai? What is Tagai? We should be able to tell them the narrative around that. A language story is something that's new this year. So as you heard, our children speak multiple languages. But this is about acknowledging and valuing everyone's language, your language, my language, and our children's language. So it's about sharing our language story with them, with each other, so that there is that appreciation and there is, I guess, that insight that teaching of a language is not, being able to speak multiple languages is not a deficit. It is something at which just a starting point to then jump from to be able to make those connections for our children. Tagai curriculum programs are the Australian curriculum, are the Australian curriculum. And what we've done is we have, a very expert teaching and learning team up there that have been able to take the English, Maths and Science Australian curriculum and develop that further to make it contextualised and meaningful in terms of how we can deliver that in our particular context in the Torres Strait.
So we still embrace STEM technology, STEAM technology, I prefer to say. We've got the drones, we've got the digital technologies. We participate in the Impact Centre booster program. So the internet has allowed us to connect these kids to other kids across the state. So our kids could actually hop into an online class with Shane's kids, and that'd be really cool if we could maybe facilitate something like that. So the internet has been able to, I guess, connect these kids in a way that we couldn't do so easily before. And the same types of initiatives, you'd be recognising those there as well with the ones that you do. So 2019, we continue our improvement agenda. You want me to continue? So it's about the systemness, as Steph said. It's about making sure that we try to get this alignment happening across all of our campuses. Our desired culture, we have the systems leadership theory, which is what we embrace as our way of working. And we provide that ongoing training. So it's Ian McDonald, they come up to the Straits, and we induct all of our leadership team in that way of working so that we're all operating the same way. Our data culture is as the same as everybody's. And every 2 years, if you can imagine the logistics and the cost, but we bring every teacher in, and we're just about to do it at the end of the June-July holidays for a 2-day teacher conference on Thursday Island. So, if the accommodation, the flights, that you can imagine, we're, $250,000, I think. But it's an investment in the PD for these guys. So we then provide appropriate PD, like the trauma training. The teaching and learning team spend an awful lot of time unpacking all of the modules with the teachers, essential skills of classroom management, all of that stuff to try to get that alignment happening and equip them with the skills to manage. These are bright, clever, funny, happy kids, but you give them the inch, they'll take the mile, as with any bright, clever, happy, funny kid. So you need to have a toolkit to be able to manage that. We have weekly communications. We have weekly webinars for our leaders to try to keep on the agenda what the improvement planning is. Attendance, we've got a lot better, Our college targets are 90% attended. What are your targets, Shane, at Leichhardt? 90. How are you going with that? Let's see if we've beat. Not quite. Yeah, we're a shade under. We're 89 point something. But, you know, you can imagine, again, 17 campuses. As was it Shane said, you know, you'd think on an island you could pretty well fossick them out. You can, to a degree, but there's a lot of distractions out there. That beautiful water, it would distract me if I looked at it more than twice, you know, on the way to work. So you can imagine for these kids. So one of the initiatives we have to address this is one of Steph's brainchild.
So one of the things that we've done this year is, as a result of a trial that we undertook, we reviewed all the feedback, took on board all the feedback that came, and we've now got this system called the Family Learning Account, whereby it's an investment or a way that our parents or families can invest in their child's education. It's called a Family Learning Account for a reason, because in the Torres Strait we roll as a family. And so, of course, as you know, the child is part of a family, which is part of an extended family and part of a community. And so this is about not just talking about parents and talking to the immediate parents, but we're also talking about other members of the family as well. Because for some of our children in the Torres Strait, some of them don't live with their parents. And as you know, you have those same dynamics in your particular schools, whereby they may live with their grandparents or other members within the family structure. So by having the family on board will ensure that that child will have that wraparound support to be able to succeed at school. So how many of you are Qantas frequent flyers and you have a Qantas frequent flyer card? So that works by you travelling, you get points, or you spend money, you get points, and so on. So same thing here. Families can participate in different levels of activities, so bronze level activities, through to platinum level activities, and they can earn points, and then they can redeem those points to get an incentive. So this is the front cover of the book that they get when they sign up for the Family Learning Account. They open a Family Learning Account, and the idea is that platinum activities and gold activities attract more points, but they are also requiring the families and the parents to be involved in things like, you know, the P&C, come along to P&C, and everyone struggles to get people to the P&C, to come to set planning meetings, to come to parent-teacher interviews, to do things that are getting a little bit more in-depth, but that's about helping them to also have a meaningful, true partnership and engage with their children's learning, not just coming along and watching them run in the sports day. Pulling our way for every school. For us in the Torres Strait, while we have fun, happy, loving children up in the Torres Strait, they can also take an inch. You know, give them an inch, they'll take a mile too. So we are well and truly on board about making sure we have safe, supportive and disciplined environment up there for our children. Desired culture, this comes from the work of Dr. Ian McDonald, and this is about making sure that those expectations for our staff and for our students and for our parents and community are articulated using the universal values of loving fairness, dignifying, honest, and so forth. But this is to ensure that some of those myths that people think that, oh, it's okay to come to work late, it's okay for me to, you know, drink a cup of coffee and leave my coffee cup on the sink. No, it's unloving and it's unfair for you to expect someone else to come and wash up your cup. So it's loving and fair for you to wash your cup after you've drunk. So that's just an idea of how we try and build systems so that we can have those systems and those symbols and those behaviours that match that desired culture. Staff wellbeing we spoke about, so I think Mark's up there somewhere on the beach there. But staff wellbeing, as Sue mentioned, is a very, very, very big thing for our families coming from south up there and leaving their families down here, for our staff members, sorry. So the things that we do up there to ensure that they feel part of the family and that they feel supported. We have a lot of structures in place to help that. And that's it. Thank you all for listening.
Yes, please. So any quick questions? I know there was one from somebody online, and that was just what sorts of support gets wrapped around you? I know you talk a lot about the support, but if you're up there and you are feeling a little bit like 6 months in, oh help.
That is a very good question. So when you come up to start your journey with us in the January Student Free Day week, we have an induction for the Monday, Tuesday. So all new staff and all leaders are in then. So the teaching and I always walk away from that thinking if they've just retained a quarter of what we've presented over those 2 days, yay, that's great, because it is a bit of information overload, but they get brought in for those 2 days, and so that's an extra induction. Wednesday's the travel day, where all of the charters take the island staff out to their island. Their heads of campus go with them. And then they have their student-free days on the Thursday, Friday, which are their campus-specific initiatives. The teaching and learning team then keep very close track. So if we've got graduates out there at the moment, the coaches will prioritise their early visits to where the graduates are. So they'll hop into the classroom with them, alongside them, and spend a few days out there. So it's, as I said, it's not a matter of telling them what to do. It's just a matter of hopping in and modelling things that will work that they might want to try. At the end of term 1, we bring all of the new staff in again. It's a lot, because they make friends in the January student free days, so then it's a great way to reconnect. But we always flag in the middle of the term, and it was a great phrase that one of our HODs coined, and it was a bit of a slump week in week 5. So the adrenaline's kicked in when you get out there and it's all new and exciting and fresh. Suddenly week 5 comes and you're in a bit of a groove and you think, oh man, it's 5 more weeks till holidays, you know, and that's what we call a bit of a slump. So that's the time when we reach out. And, you know, on the islands, they have their own community-based initiatives. We also reach out with our teams. And then, you know, if there's any additional support, each campus then has a campus supervisor that then will keep track of that person. Not everybody fits into our context. I need to make that very plain. We sometimes have people who come up not for the right reasons, and they don't feel like they're the square pegs in the round holes. So that they're the ones that will continue to battle, because we are very remote, and it's not, you know, not for everybody, that type of lifestyle, but we give everybody an opportunity to, I guess, develop. And I can't count the number of times that people have come up after a couple of days in tears, don't want to stay, and I've said, you need to give it a red hot go. Because tears are a little bit normal when we first come up to such a new place, and routinely the teams will throw their loving arms around, and in a few weeks' time that's just, you know, a distant memory. But not everybody fits in, but we have great mechanisms in place to support, but sometimes ultimately they realise that, you know, it's not for them, and that's good that they realise that, and then we'll help them transition back.
What I might do is, because we do have to leave the room by 12. So look, thank you so much. Staff at Tagai, it sounds absolutely fascinating. I love the concept of being so many campuses but one college. I think that's just a wonderful way of being family. What I would suggest is our students online, as well as these two after they've had a thought, might want to ask some questions. So if you don't mind, we'll get back to you with those questions and we can actually pop them up onto our website as well. I also wonder whether this recording, I know it will have come through with the actual with the Zoom, but just in case, once I've looked at the Zoom to make sure everything's... Yeah, well, just to have the PowerPoint separately if necessary, that's all. Okay, thank you very much indeed for coming, and thank you for our students to be here.
Thank you for personally coming all the way in. So you'll have, I'm going to contact you, I've got your details, so you'll get emails from me, you've got all my details. Yes, so yeah, we'll stay in touch. 4 years, 30 years? 30 years, okay. Yeah. So probably one question for you guys would be about students that are not, it'd be nice having asked, because at the moment, so that's usually the tricky part. Oh, sorry. Are we still recording? Are we? Or, oh, okay. I haven't switched it off yet. So yeah. So if you're third year students and you are considering prac, it might be something to have a chat to. Thursday Island gets
outer islands not so. So you've got the Beyond the Range grant that you can apply for, which gives them, I think, up to $5,000 to defray costs, although we've successfully negotiated for that to be augmented for one of our islands that's only accessible by chopper, because the chopper flights are significantly more expensive. So if you're wanting to do it, get in early. We get onto the Beyond the Range, because my advice would be to go to those outer islands. You're going to get a really authentic remote experience there, and then if all goes well, we'll have a job offer for you at the end of your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Better
Vacate.
vacate.
Vacate.